Would you like to do your report?
Yes. One of the first things with my report, one of the concerns we had raised last week was parking on city sidewalks. So I did ask the PD department to look into that. So if the Chief Smith will come up and give a brief update on that, and then I'll go into some of the other things that were provided for staff to look into, and then play a nice video for y'all.
I think one of the concerns was parking on the sidewalk. I think one particular vehicle, I think it was mentioned, parks in between the sidewalk and the curb in itself. The officers are real particular when they go out and they do these parking enforcements. It's what's on the ticket is what they'll write, and there's nothing that really kind of stipulates that. So it's a matter of honing it down and then maybe just speaking with the owner of the vehicle, especially in that particular section. And nobody wrote any tickets in reference to it, but it's just a matter of having them go throughout the entire neighborhood to pick out particular vehicles. Sidewalks are really, very rarely do you actually see vehicles parking on the sidewalks permanently, unless most of the time it seems like they're doing it for a short period of time for whatever reason, and then they move the vehicle. But I think in reference to this particular one, I hadn't seen anything. I wanted to actually take a look and see why. So when I drove up, I saw that the vehicle, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was one particular vehicle sitting there. It was in between. It wasn't sitting on the sidewalk. It was sitting in. Now there's a muddy ditch where it's actually parked on, but it's not actually literally sitting on the sidewalk.
I have a question, Chief and Mark, for you both. Yes. Is there the ability, as we're going through the city code updates, to then maybe look at folks actually parking with their vehicles on the actual curb itself? Because over time that does cause wear and tear to infrastructure as well. Is there the ability to do that?
I want to come up with that. No, we're just trying to enforce what is currently on the books. It does say no parking on sidewalks. City ordinance. Chapter 4.
I'm just curious.
We can look into it. The issue really comes down to enforcement, manpower to enforce the ordinances. You can draft ordinances to impose penalties for things, but it really comes down to the manpower the city actually has to enforce the ordinance, and that tends to be a problem. I mean, for most localities. I mean, you want to prevent a lot of things. You want to, maintain the look of the city or the locality, but one of the limiting factors is just how many boots do you have on the ground to enforce the ordinances? I mean, you have one code enforcement officer. You don't have a vast amount of police officers. And so if you're taking police officers away from doing police work to do code enforcement work, there's a trade-off, and you have to find a balance that you all are comfortable with.
I agree. There could be an opportunity if we look at some of the language, as we had talked about with some of our other property maintenance things, doing a public service announcement kind of campaign of just letting folks know if we adopt language that it's not permitted. My only statement with that is when we look at maintaining or repairing curbs, we have a lot of granite curbs. And those granite curb lines are very costly to repair, and they're historic. And when you have those,
Granite curbs.
I've seen them, like there's one right near my house on Locust. So there's granite right at the curb line, and all of those houses that are on Locust that come up to the curb line. So if you have, so if you have folks parking on the side of the street and they're getting onto the curb, like for instance, perfect example would be like when Christmas Mother's operating, and then folks think if they've got a big truck, let me put two of my wheels on, the curb. Just the thought, I don't know, trying to think of a solution, because in the back, you don't want to create muddy yards or other things that are unappealing. And I do think there's some areas where we have folks that are parking in the street or very close to sidewalks, and there might be behind the home parking, rear access parking. But it's up to you all, ultimately.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. So I just have a few other things. We are, Mark Mr. Popovich, myself, and Mr. Steele are going to Salem tomorrow to meet in the DEQ regional office to hopefully get to a near finalization of our consent order at this point in time. So there should be an update coming after that meeting pretty soon. So we're encouraged. Things have been pretty well received by DEQ, you know, our concerns and just our limitations on things. So that is moving forward. The other thing I wanted to update you all on is there were some inquiries on things that fall under city operations, especially in Mr. Hunter's district, and actually add value to the entire community. Those were centered around the Jeter Watson Center, the park and playground. The area for construction of a shelter and restroom facility has been flagged, so the markings have been put out. It is extremely wet, so the drainage issue of the park was not addressed prior to installation of playground equipment, so that's going to be one of the things they look into as well. So right now, moving forward, also is with the flagged areas and starting to do anything additional is weather dependent. Unfortunately, we've had a very wet winter, but rather have rain than snow. We're working on getting a construction road built to assist contractors in and out of construction area due to the extremely wet ground. So that's adding some time and delay, even though there's budgeted funds. And if weather is permitting, we should have the shelter and the restroom facility, as well as the grill, benches, and rough parking in probably late April to early May. So late April to early May for the shelter, the restrooms, the grill, benches, and a parking area. Any questions with that? And then there's one last thing I wanted to show you all. I'm not sure if everyone's seen it. The city prepared an HGTV hometown makeover video submission. We, as of this afternoon, were well over 4,000 hits, verified hits, and 98% of the viewers were actually watching the entire video. So if you all have no objection, I was going to play it now. So bear with me as I try to play it, as I was informed that we had some audio difficulties this evening.